We love believing that lost cities fall for 1,000 dramatic reasons: storms, wars, monsters, curses, even dream magic. But those are comforting lies. Because whether real or fictional, every lost city collapses for the same reason, one we keep hiding under all the myth. And the reason matters because it's not just about cities, but it's about us. And these places show up everywhere, under oceans, inside mountains, drifting in the sky, or even just on regular ground. A few existed only in stories, until someone dug them back into reality. So the real question is, what is the one flaw every lost city shares? Part 1. Where be dragons? The first pattern is impossible to miss. Every lost city slowly builds its own coffin, brick by brick, with isolation. Moria literally locks itself behind a password that only dwarves can speak. Atlantis is so well hidden that it takes a whole
7 hours ago we started this expedition.
A whole 7 hours in a submarine to find it. And the climax of the road to El Dorado revolves around isolating the city even more than it already is. Excessive isolation can cause a whole array of problems, like resource shortages, genetic bottlenecks.
I have been unable to find a suitable marriage partner. At least one I'm not related to.
And total dependence on local geography. But the important thing here is this: when a city is cut off from the world, whatever eventually goes wrong is almost always internal. Like, Laputa hides inside a storm cloud and by the way, I want to be clear that I will not be making any joke about the name of that city. Not because I'm above that kind of thing, I'm not.
It's Laputa!
But because it's already an intentional pun. Not from Miyazaki, but from Jonathan Swift, who created the city of Laputa in Gulliver's Travels. That's the man who said, "Punning is a talent which no man affects to despise, but he that is without it."
Look at this, Sheeta. Dad kept a journal and he made all sorts of drawings of Laputa.
Finally, I now know the way to Laputa. Hurry! No time to wait!
In any case, by naming the city like this, Jonathan Swift makes it clear what he thinks of advanced civilizations that isolate themselves. The tragedy is always the same. The city destroys itself long before anything else can. It won't be a storm, a monster, or even invaders that destroy it, but the city itself that collapses from within.
1,000 years ago, the streets were lit, and our people did not have to scavenge for food at the edge of a crumbling city.
In Plato's writings, Atlantis dies when its people grow arrogant and warmongering, and the gods punish them for it. And so the city dies because of their moral failure. Disney's version of Atlantis, which takes place after the fall, shows the civilization once again on the brink of extinction. And it's only external contact from well-meaning American academics that can breathe new life into the city.
That's an easy thing to miss, you deserve credit for even getting this far.
And yes, at first glance, it looks like Moria fell because of a monster, but the Balrog didn't just show up. The dwarves dug too deep, ignored every warning, and in the end, they're the ones who walk it. In The Mummy, the city of Hamunaptra literally collapses into its own trap. Lost cities rarely have such a literal self-destruct mechanism, or do they? But metaphorically, the result is the same. The source of the collapse is almost always internal. And you might say, wait, what about Easter Island, which collapsed because of disease and slave traders? What about Pompeii, wiped out by a volcano? What about cities that were just straight up conquered? Those are not internal circumstances. The poor cities could do nothing against that. And yes, you are absolutely right. We'll come back to those later, in the section where I make the argument that everything should actually be blamed on Spanish people. Part 2.
Afraid, are you?
No, sir.
Whether in politics, sports, or even art, the one ahead will start playing defense to conserve their lead, and eventually that fear of losing what they have will be their downfall. Like Hollywood's obsession with remakes. It's a way to make a quick buck, but that fear of risk kills off creativity, which was what made movies great in the first place. Cities behave exactly the same way. In a bid to protect their own greatness, they may start mistaking tradition for stability and refuse to adapt. If you're sitting on top of a masterpiece, it's easy to forget how it was actually born from chaos and change. The preservationist mind wants to keep the city exactly as it is, as if protecting its spirit, when in truth the spirit of the city was never static. Yu Yevon would rather kill Zanarkand and its people and freeze it all inside a dream than let it change, forgetting that it was change that built the city in the first place and invented the best sports ever. I freaking love Blitzball. This whole video is just an excuse for me to say that. For the ones sitting at the top, any change comes with the risk of losing that top position.
Our way of life is dying,
our way of life is preserved.
And just like they are afraid of losing power, they become afraid of any sort of change. The city builds even higher walls to keep outsiders away, but smothers itself in the process. It becomes afraid of scarcity and chooses to hoard resources and wealth instead of relying on healthy trade. Spiritually, the city becomes afraid of its own past, both in the sense that it rejects how lively its past was,
The kings of our past would weep if they could see how far we have fallen.
and in the sense that it doesn't want to own up to its past mistakes. Metaphorically, the city buries its secrets in its own walls. That fear expresses itself in the architecture of the city, with walls that become coffins, traps that trigger on the city itself, or floating away from the rest of humanity. In the end, we remember lost cities not by how they lived, but by what they feared. And their ruins warn us about the dangers of letting fear steer civilization.
This is no longer a throne room. This is a tomb.
They are fossils of failed experiments. Sorry to talk about myself for 9 seconds, but I've been on a YouTube hiatus for a few months, and since returning I've been struggling to find my audience again. If you have any advice on how I can improve, could be literally anything, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much. Part 3. Better a live donkey than a dead lion. My dad loves this quote from Ernest Shackleton. By the way, big up to my dad. And now I'm showing it to you, and indeed it is a good quote. If you were an adventurer in the early 1900s, Ernest Shackleton was the kind of leader you would like to have for your expedition, because with him you come back alive. When so many others died on the way, Shackleton knew when he'd lost and decided to go back. This is what he wrote to his wife to explain this decision. But it takes courage to accept defeat, and many people and many cities would rather die like lions than live like donkeys.
I can fight!
The city may convince itself that things can never get better than this, and it tries to freeze that moment forever. They begin to worship a single moment in their history, and they lose the ability to evolve past it. And even after a city dies, those who revive it often cannot resist repeating the old mistakes, instantly returning to the warmongering instincts that destroyed it in the first place.
I thought I would show you an example of Laputa's power. We are about to celebrate the rebirth of the Laputan kingdom.
Or a dwarven king might see it as an insult to stop digging, convinced that the old kings would never have shown such restraint. He fails to see that here, courage is actually to take the difficult decision to stop. The Shackleton quote is actually a bit of a paradox here, because in truth, the ones who died are the donkeys who were not able to change, the ones who kept marching toward the South Pole despite every warning, the ones who kept digging or kept warmongering out of stubbornness, while true lions knew when to stop. They knew when to open their gates to outsiders. Part 4, I've been lying to you in this video. Well, kind of, but I've been lying in the same way that all these stories have been lying. I have been saying that all the lost cities fell for the same reason, and that it was internal and driven by fear.
Vandalism is wrong, Marcy.
Okay.
But the truth is that some cities do fall because of external reasons, and it would be offensive to say otherwise. Like, imagine you're living in Vilcabamba in the 16th century, and you see Spanish conquistadors invading your city with firearms, shooting the men in your family and kidnapping the women, and bringing diseases like typhus and smallpox that will kill millions. And then, 500 years later, you have a French YouTuber telling you, well, actually your city died the moment you tried to freeze perfection. He'd be like, no, I died when I got shot in the head. In the end, this idea that every city falls because of some internal flaw is what big art wants you to believe. But the truth is, sometimes you do everything right and you are just unlucky. The idea is extremely relevant today. Self-help books have made a habit of telling you that if your life isn't great, then it's because of some internal failure of yours. That you should be exercising more and scrolling less and eating healthier and making more friends. And while a lot of that is true, it's a fallacy to think that once you do everything right, then suddenly the stars will align for you. And it is not cutting out avocado toast that is preventing you from being financially stable. Just like it was not being more open-minded that would have saved the city of Pompeii from the volcano. Or maybe the people of Malden Island were amazingly self-actualized and had no moral flaw at all, but that didn't save them from being alone in the middle of the Pacific, on a mostly barren place. And like the Google reviewers are saying, there's nothing there, just island, 3 stars. Part 5, you are the lost city. Our tales of lost cities do try to project moral value onto their falls, and so they can misrepresent the truth. But still, they hold valuable lessons for us as humans. Because in the end, lost cities are a reflection of their people. They fear what the people fear, and we are the people. So the failures of our lost cities are our failures, and they fall for the same reasons we do. Just like the lost cities, we begin to fade the moment we refuse change, and we grow desperate to preserve illusions about ourselves. And if we love something, we may cling too tightly and smother the very thing we meant to protect. For some people, the parallel with lost cities is even more obvious. Percy Fawcett, who many say inspired the character of Indiana Indiana Jones, who was 3 years old at the time Schliemann found Troy. Years later, Percy Fawcett devoted his life to the search of another lost city, in the Amazon rainforest. His obsession made for a beautiful story, and book, and movie. But by refusing to call it quits after the first expeditions, by chasing an idea of greatness he couldn't let go of, there was only one way his story could end. Now, Percy Fawcett really craved something that destroyed him, didn't he? Well, I made a video about that, about those cravings that end up destroying us. In it I talk about the shadow self, free soloing, and Pikachu's unhealthy relationship with ketchup. Please consider giving that video a chance if you would like to support my channel. I also wanted to thank you so much for the positive comments you left on my previous videos. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.